Welcome to the Who I Am podcast with Mandolin Freeland, Marcely Woofenden, and special guest. We are dedicated to sharing women's stories from all walks of life. We will be diving into experiences, challenges, and triumphs. If you are a woman, then this podcast is for you, and we are so glad that you found us.
Welcome, listeners. Thank you for coming today or getting on to listen to us. I'm Mandolin, and my sister Marcy's here.
Hi.
And we have our special guest, Katie, on with us today. Katie Southwick, say hello.
Hello.
All right. So Marcy and I both know Katie. We go way back. And Katie is awesome. She's very talented in a lot of things, and I'll let her share that. But we invited Katie on today because Marcy and I have both seen her journey in the last while. She has shared on social media, and she's gone through some crazy crap. And so that's what this podcast is all about, sharing about women and their incredible stories to motivate us and let us know that we're not alone. And I thought Katie would be awesome for being such a good influence for us to hear from today. So Katie, who are you?
So my name's Katie Southwick. First, I want to say thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This is such a huge honor. I'm a big fan of both Marcy and Mandolin. I absolutely love both of you guys. You guys are amazing. So having this opportunity is just incredible. But I'm just Katie. I am a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I married the love of my life almost 21 years ago. We have 3 kids. I have an in-home bakery and catering business. And so that's basically it. That's who I am. That's what I do. I am a mom still trying to survive and do everything just like everybody else. So
Love it.
that's
Yeah.
me.
We all just feel like we're just the average, right? Which is good. Keep us humbled. But yeah, your bakery is so cool. And I remember watching you move into your new home, which feels like it was yesterday, but how long ago was that?
It will be 3 years this weekend, which
Yeah,
is crazy.
time flies. And I
Yes.
just remember, I think you have a big old nice kitchen where you can do your baking in.
Yeah, we live on half an acre and our house was 747 square feet. So 5 of us in that space, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. Like you could use the bathroom, shower, and wash your hands at the same time. And I wish I was kidding. It was teeny tiny, but I loved my little house. And we tore that down and built this house so that we'd have more space for our kids, for our friends, our family, and for me to be able to do the in-home bakery with my daughter. So
Okay, we could end
yeah.
this podcast right now. Like, listen to that. She lived in a tiny home with a family of 5. That's just crazy. So good girl, you deserve the house you're in. Okay, so watching your social media, I don't even know how long it's been, but I've seen your struggle with your husband, and so I would love for you to shed some light on kind of what's happened with your husband and kind of where that's led you today.
Yeah, for sure. So, when I talked to Mandolin last week about doing this podcast, and I mentioned something to my mom, and she goes, "Well, what are you going to share? Like, you have so many different things that have made it so that your story is your story." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I could go through so many different things." But the journey that we've been on with my husband, so my husband, he suffers from severe anxiety and depression, and he has his entire life. The depression didn't really kick in until about 2020, or sorry, 2003, is when his depression kind of kicked in. So um, the last, I will say, gosh, 10 months has been a nightmare. So to go back, our son came to us in April of 2023, our oldest son, Caden, and he said, "I want to graduate early. I've decided I want to go on a mission." And it shook my entire world. So Brock, we were dating in 2003, and he got a mission call and left to go on his mission in August of 2003. And when he went on his mission, everything was kind of turned upside down. He was in the MTC for 24 hours. He came home with a medical release of separation anxiety, and not separation from any one person, but separation from his everyday routine. And it really shook him. And to this day, he still struggles with that and still feels like he is less than anything amazing because he came home from his mission. Even though he served in the temple for 6 years or 6 months before we were married, like he has always held an active temple recommend. He's always like honored his priesthood covenants, like and his temple covenants. Like he is seriously the best person, but it's eaten him alive. So when Caden came to us, it was completely out of the blue. He's told us his whole life he doesn't want to go on a mission. I've never pressed it because Brock's experience was so horrendous. He put up with a lot of garbage from like the MTC president and people when he came home. And anyway, it was such a nightmare that I was like, oh my gosh, I never want my kids to experience that. You know, we want to, as moms, protect them always. And so when Caden came to us and said that, I was like, absolutely not. We're not doing this. You need a senior year. You need to, like, we're not doing this. And needless to say, Caden had all of his credits done. And in June 13th of 2023, Caden had a mission call to go to England. And I was completely shook. But I was so stuck in my, okay, let's get him prepared, let's get him ready, that I didn't really notice everything that was going on with Brock, which is horrible to say, but I didn't. He did a really good job of hiding it. But deep down, it was eating him alive. So Brock's at the time, he was on 2 different medications, one for anxiety, one for depression. And his anxiety medication was costing us about $1,300 out of pocket every month. And Brock was like, I can't justify this. This is insane. The insurance was covering a huge portion. It's a very expensive medication, which that's a whole nother podcast. But it like was killing him because he's like, now we got to pay for admission. We got to do this. Like Brock's just very logical and he thinks all these things through. And so he stopped taking one of his medications and didn't tell me. And within 2 weeks, I knew something was wrong. And so I asked him I'm like, are you still taking your meds? And he's like, yeah, I'm good, you know, and I'm like, something's wrong. So he finally was like, I stopped taking this one. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, got him back on the medications, thought everything would be fine. He was off of them by the time he got back on them, he was off of them for about 4 months. And at that point, he could hardly even function. So fast forward to November, we have Caden's farewell. In the middle of the month, by the end of the month, Caden is in England. And I will say to all of the moms who have missionaries, my hat goes off to you and my heart goes out to you because it is one of the hardest and one of the best things in the world. When we dropped Caden off at the MTC, I have not seen my husband cry that hard since my dad died 8 years ago. And the only other time I've seen him cry that hard was when his grandpa passed away the year before that. He just is a strong guy, you know. He loves to pitch in and help me with everything that I'm doing. He literally is like my right-hand man in everything. He's always helped with babies. He's helped with laundry. He's helped with baking. He's helped with the bakery. He's helped with everything. So dropping off Caden and watching how it just ripped Brock apart.
Katie,
I knew yeah.
Just so you know, that's very unusual.
To have a husband that helps like that.
He sounds perfect. Yeah. Like,
he really is.
My husband's great, but yeah, there was no help with babies or anything like that.
I never got up with my babies in the middle of the night. Brock did. He was like, I don't get to see him during the day. So he's like, I'll get up with them. He would change him, bring him to me. I'd nurse him. He'd put him back to bed. Like, I'm telling you, I married the best guy in the world, and I will always sing his praises because he literally has helped me in every aspect. Like, we don't fight. We bicker every once in a while, but really, like, we don't have the perfect marriage, but we have the perfect marriage for us. Awesome. So I know that I'm blessed and I'm so, so grateful for that. But things shifted when Caden left. Like, he stopped talking. He stopped helping. He would go to work, come home, and he'd sit on one spot on the couch, or he'd come lay in our bed, and he would just stare. There was no communication. The light in his eyes was completely gone. Like, our house felt like a morgue. And my kids' friends used to come over all the time. Like, I've always wanted my house to be like the gathering place where my kids and their friends could come anytime. Like, I've had kids come over and they'll jump on our bed and be like, oh my gosh, I have to tell you what's going on. You know, like, and that's what I've always wanted. And something shifted when Caden left. And I didn't realize it until Christmas time that it wasn't necessarily the void of having Caden home, which, yes, that was very difficult, but it was what was happening internally with Brock. And I witnessed my husband, who was on this pedestal, who was this rock, who has always just, been right there. I realized that he had knocked himself off that pedestal and that I couldn't pull him out of it. So, holidays were hard. Like, we didn't leave our house. He would go to work, he would come home, and he would literally sit there. It was so hard. And I'm very social. Like, I am definitely not an introvert. Like, I need people, I need interaction. I have friends that we get together with all the time, and everything just stopped. And I felt like I had lost a child. I felt like I had lost my husband, and I felt like my world was completely crumbling, and I didn't know what to do. So hey, I had reached out to Brock's dad. I have a good relationship with my father-in-law, and I had reached out to him, and I'm like, what do I do? And Brock is the ward clerk in our ward, so he's part of the bishopric, and they had all noticed that something was going on as well, but nobody could really pinpoint how to help him. So we have Caden's weekly calls. We are getting emails, and Caden's calling. We're on completely different time zones, so he's 7 hours ahead of us. So our phone calls are happening between 1 and 2 a.m., which is fine for me because I'm up at that hour anyway baking, and Brock's not. So Caden never realized that something was off, that something was wrong, that his dad was different, that things were different. And it wasn't until Christmas that Caden was like, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, time out. You're fine. You can do this. Like, you committed to this. You're going to do this. And in Brock's eyes, I was basically saying the same thing that the MTC president was saying to him. You'll never amount to anything. You're never going to be able to have a successful family or relationship. You're never like, all this stuff was what Brock was hearing, when all I was saying was, Caden, you're in England. It's not like I can jump on a plane or call and get you a ticket today and have you home in a few hours. Like, there's a process, and I want you to try. Holidays are hard away from family. The Southwick family, both of my in-laws served their missions in England, and so like Boxing Day is a big day. Like, it's just, holidays are hard. It's hard to be away from your family. Marcy, you know that. You don't live around your family right now. Like, it's hard to have the holidays without your family. So I'm thinking, okay, be a strong mom, push him, really support him, just try to encourage him. And Brock's hearing like, absolutely not, you can't come home, you're stuck. And I didn't realize how much that was tearing my husband apart. So fast forward to January, holidays are over. We just made it through New Year's, and Brock can't get out of bed. And I call his boss, and I'm like, you guys, I don't know what to do. And they said, let's give him a couple weeks off. Let's let him just sleep it off, get him into his counseling, get him, like, let's see what we can do. And nothing changed. He would just literally lay in bed all day. He wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking, he wouldn't get up to go to the bathroom. Like, he literally couldn't function. And I didn't know what to do. And so in my mind, it's like, okay, just let him sleep it off. Like, he'll get out of it, he'll snap out of it, it's fine. So I just kept doing things like normal. I get a frantic phone call from my son, and he's like, I can't do this. I want to come home. And I'm like, Caden, that's not an option right now because I'm dealing with everything else with Brock. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, it's not an option. And he's like, Mom, I have to come home. And I said, have you talked to your mission president? Yes. And he told me that the only way I'm coming home is in a body bag. And if that's what I have to do, then that's what I'm going to do. And I was like, okay, let's get you home. So I immediately jump on. I send an email to his mission president. I call my father-in-law, who's our bishop. He reached out to our stake president, and I'm like, get my son home. The mission president was very rude. He sent me an email. It was not very kind, and Brock read it and just started bawling. And it was the first time that Brock had shown emotion since Caden left. And he's like, get him home now. You get on the phone, you get him a ticket. Like, I don't care what we have to do. And I'm like, there's a process. Anyway, long story short, we got Caden home the end of January, right before the 1st of February. And I'm like, okay, life's going to get back to normal. We're going to be good. Things are going to be good. Brock went back to work. I'm like, perfect. We're doing good. I get a random phone call from Brock's boss. And he's like, Katie, I don't know what to do. Like, Brock is just staring. Like, he's still working. He's still doing everything. But I can see that he is, he's just not himself. And he said, what can we do? Like, I can't keep him on like this. Like, I'm worried that something's going to happen. And I said, okay. And he goes, what if we let him go and you guys file for unemployment and get him the help that he needs? And I was like, that would be amazing. So Brock got let go that day. He comes home, and I had to call Brock and tell him. His boss had tried to call him. Brock didn't answer the phone because he was in the middle of a job. So he was going from one job to the other, and I called him. And I said, how's it going? Anyway, told him the conversation I had just had with Brandon. And he was like, see, I am a failure. And I was like, time out, time out. He came home, we talked about it, and I said, you need to get help. And one of the conditions of you being let go and trying to file for the unemployment is that you can get the help you need. And so I was so grateful for his boss and the company because they really were super supportive and they were all over getting Brock help. So I took Brock to the hospital to try to get him admitted. And we ended up going to 4 different hospitals within a matter of 5 weeks. And we were turned away from every single one. They all said, well, are you suicidal? And he's like, I'm scared to die. Have I thought about ending my life? Absolutely. Have I thought about, how it would be better for my family if I wasn't here? For sure. But I am scared to die. And they said, well, when you're ready to pull that trigger, you come back. And I was like, what? This is what's wrong with the world. Why can he not get the help that he needs? And I was so frustrated. And so then we'd come home and he would just cry the whole way home and say, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Well, then I took him to Utah Valley one day. It was really bad. He was functioning really slowly. I had a huge event I was doing, and I asked him to make Cafe Rio dressing, which he's done for years. And it took him 1 hour to make one batch that should take maybe 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, we're done. So I took him down to Utah Valley Hospital. They pointed us in the direction of the LDS Access Center up in Salt Lake, which is a place where anybody can show up, and they have counselors there to help you. They have ways and resources to help you make a plan for any situation that you're in. And it was the first time that I finally felt like, okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. They got us into Brock's counseling center, Lifestone, which has been amazing. The counselor there, the psych there, like they've been incredible working with Brock. And for the first time, I felt hope. So Caden's like, Dad, I'm home. Like, snap out of it. What's going on? What's wrong? And he's like, I don't know, bud. I don't know. The problem was when Brock would talk to people, he would just keep it all in. Like, there was nothing for him to say. And then we'd come home and he would just stare. And I'm like, there has to be something going on. Like, what is happening? Nobody could break it out of him. So finally, his counselor was like, we've got to do something. There has to be something we can do. We were we were not approved for unemployment. We fought and fought and fought. The company fought and fought and fought. But because it was a mental illness that he was let go for, that disqualifies him for unemployment, which doesn't make sense to me. But if it's a medical issue or something with mental health since COVID, that no longer applies. You can't qualify for unemployment. So instead, we took the next steps to try to get like food stamps and health insurance through them because I was still paying out of pocket for health insurance. He doesn't get health insurance through his company. And it was a nightmare. And so you add all of that stress on top of everything else that's going on. And it was like, I'm drowning, but I don't have that option. There's no life jacket. There's no lifesaver that's going to help me, overcome this. What am I going to do? I have these 3 kids who are all depending on me. Caden's home now trying to figure out what to do. Carly's getting ready to start her senior year. Garrett's getting ready to go into high school as a sophomore. Carly's not doing senior year at the high school. She's going to cosmetology school. So now I got to figure out how to pay for that. And I've got like all this stuff just started piling on me. And I literally felt like I was drowning and that there was nothing that I could do. And Brock couldn't see it. So we finally got a really awesome employment specialist with the state who was like, hey, I hear your story. I get it. Let's see what we can do. We were able to get on Medicaid for health insurance for everybody but Caden because he was over the age of 18. Caden got a full-time job to kind of help pitch in with bills. I was taking every job I possibly could to try to support my family financially. And I was literally killing myself, but didn't realize I was killing myself. I was working 23. Oh, I just lost my AirPod. Sorry. I was working 23 hours a day. not sleeping that other hour. Like I was literally killing myself, taking everything on that I could. And Brock couldn't see it. So finally, one day I just broke. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I jumped on social media and I had a full blown meltdown basically through stories, which I don't get embarrassed. It was absolutely embarrassing, but I did it. I got on, I just lost it and let it all go. And I'm not a crier, I'm not super emotional. I like to kind of keep that stuff in. But I literally was like, what am I going to do? There's no help. There's nothing we can do. The psychiatrist wants him to do ketamine infusions, which scared the crap out of me because you hear so many stories and it's like, it's a horse tranquilizer. Like, why are we using that to treat depression and anxiety? Like, what's this going to do? And then I started researching it and had so many people. So I post this in stories. I literally, the next morning by about 6 o'clock, had over 500 messages between Instagram and Facebook with all of these people who were like, Katie, you need to do a GoFundMe. You need to get him in for ketamine treatments. Let me tell you my experience. Like all these messages. And I spent probably 6 hours reading these messages, just bawling. I came in and started sharing some of it with Brock, and he just stared. And his stare is like he's not there. And I'm just like, do you hear like what these people are sharing? Do you hear this stuff? Anyway, long story short, I did open a GoFundMe. Brock was able to do 6 ketamine treatments after I did a ton of research on it. And the first 3 did nothing. Brock was too scared to let him take him deeper. So the way that we did the ketamine, it was infusions that were run up at his clinic. His psychiatrist was there doing it. And there's a nurse in there the whole time. She'll kind of interject every 15, 20 minutes, just be like, Brock, are you doing okay? And he'd be like, yeah, I'm good. His psych kept saying, Brock, we need to go deeper. We need to take you deeper. You're not releasing. We need to take you deeper. And he's like, no, I'm good. And it's because in his mind, he felt like he was high as a kite and he didn't like that feeling. He's never done drugs before. I haven't either, but he's never had that feeling. And it scared the crap out of him. So the first 3 treatments, I was like, this is a waste of money. Like we just dropped $7,000 for what? And after that 3rd treatment, and he'd get really loud during the treatments. Like it would be really quiet. And then all of a sudden he'd look over and he'd be like, what happened? What's wrong? And he'd be yelling. And I'm like, you're okay. And I'd hold his hand throughout the whole thing. So after the 3rd treatment, his psych was like, hey, Brock, I'm going to take you really deep and you're just going to go with it and we're just going to see how you do. If you feel uncomfortable, I can bring you down, but we've got to take you deeper. And so she did. And she took him up from, I think it was 35 units to 80 units. And it was the first time he was just relaxed. He was calm. His counselor was in there asking questions as well, trying to get him to talk and break through things. Nothing would be said, except every once in a while he'd squeeze my hand. So we had this little thing where we do 3 squeezes to say I love you, like when we're at church or somewhere that we can't talk. And Brock's really good at showing his love and affection. Like every single day for the last 21 years at the same time, I get a text telling me how much he loves me and why he loves me until this all started in November. And so he would reach over and he'd grab my hand and he'd do 3 squeezes. And I'd look at him and I'd smile and I'd do it back. And then he would just say, I love you, like really loud. And it was so random. But I'm like, okay, we're getting there. We're getting somewhere. The treatment would end. We'd come home and we'd have to have a silent house for 24 hours. No TV, no phone, no nothing, no interruptions so that he could really process stuff. And it was amazing. That 4th treatment was like, oh my gosh, breakthrough. Here we go. Treatment number 5, same thing. Treatment number 6, she let him take him a little bit deeper. And then the treatment stopped. We paid for 6 treatments because she's like, that should be great. That should be everything that you need. Then all of a sudden, Brock gets an email that says, hey, I think you're ready to go back to work. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. So Brock texts his boss because they were holding a job for him and said, hey, I just got, released to go back to work. And he called within a minute. I'm not kidding. He pushed send. It wasn't even a full minute later that he gets a phone call. And Brandon's like, amazing. Can you start tomorrow? And so he went back to work that next day at 7 a.m. And our life has turned upside down again. And I'm like, oh, too much, too fast. You didn't take a break. You had to slowly ease into it, but he didn't, because in his mind, he was letting all of us down by not financially supporting us, by not being himself, by not, all these things. And I talked to him about it, and I'm like, I would rather you stay home and not have any income than have you go back down the path that we just got off of. And he's like, I won't let it get that bad. Well, we found out, rewind, that when Brock got put back on his medications, the pharmacy had filled the wrong prescription. So they filled a prescription from the year before where he was on 50 milligrams compared to 300 milligrams. So that was part of the problem. He wasn't getting as much medication as he needed. So we fixed all of that. Anyway, things have kind of been crazy again, and it's super hard to watch. But he's getting up every morning. He's still going to work full time, but it's kicking his trash. So they moved him. So Brock is a plumber. He's a master plumber. And like I said, he works for an amazing company, just a small company. And they put him on finishes. So he was with a totally different crew, whereas before, he ran his crew. But he's a master plumber, and so he could be left with his own crew. And now he's doing finishes. And so he's alone a lot of the day. And there's one other guy that does finishes as well. He's a little bit older than us, and he's not super chatty. And Brock feels alone all day long. And then he comes home, and we're right back to where he comes in. He sits down on the couch in that same spot and just stares. He'll come lay down on the bed, and he'll just stare. And it's so frustrating because I'm like, you jumped too fast, too soon. You should have eased into it. So I had emailed his psychiatrist and just said, why? You didn't even meet with him before sending that. But when she sent it, she also sent it to the state. So it's like, okay, you're going to lose your benefits starting this day because he's been approved to go back to work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, there's so much more that you're not seeing, that you're missing. And it's been so frustrating. But he's still doing it. He's still showing up. He's still getting out of bed every day. But then he comes home and he crashes, and there's very little interaction. There was a time during all of this where our daughter had she had her wisdom teeth out. I couldn't remember what she had done. She had her wisdom teeth out, and so she was sedated. And we were on our ride home, and Brock was driving, which Brock wasn't driving hardly at all throughout all of this. But Brock was driving, and I was in the front seat, and Carly just started bawling. She's super emotional when she gets sedated. And she just started bawling, and I'm like, are you okay? And she's just like, I can't do this anymore, Mom. And Carly suffers from anxiety, and she has since she was probably since she was a baby, really. If I left her, Brock would call me within 10 minutes, be like, get back. But since second grade, she has been taking medications for anxiety, and she just lost it. And it was probably the most emotional part of all of this, because she felt free to say whatever she needed to say. And it was the first time since all of this had happened with Brock that she was able to speak her mind and tell her dad exactly how she felt. And it was hard to listen to. I jumped from the front to the back and sat and held her while she cried, and we just listened. And Brock just drove. He didn't say two words. We pull in the garage. Brock gets out of the car, and I opened the door and I said, no, you need to listen to what your daughter has to say. This is real. This isn't her medication. She just finally feels like she can say it. And Brock just sat there and listened. And I was like, how does that make you feel? I mean, she ripped him apart and said, you don't do anything. You don't help. Mom's killing herself. You don't even see it. She was blunt. She was harsh. And he just sat there. And I was like, what is going on? This isn't you. There's nothing there. Anyway, so the psychiatrist or his therapist had said, I think you need to talk to your kids, Brock. They are all holding this emotion in. You got to talk to your kids and see how this is affecting them and your wife. And I would go sit through his sessions with him, because if I didn't, he wouldn't go. He'd call and cancel it. And he wouldn't say very much. And his therapist is like, I can't help you if you won't talk to me. But he's like, I don't know what to tell you. Nothing's in my mind. When I am looking straight and staring, nothing's there. And I'm like, that is so weird. So all of the kids told Brock how they felt. I told Brock how I felt. And it was so freeing to be able to be like, listen, I just went from mom to being mom, dad, taxi driver, cook, chef, like all these things by myself. Like the state had us down as a single parent home because Brock was they put incapacitated and unable to work and unable to function as a parent. And I'm like, they have you down like you're incapacitated, like you're dead, like you don't exist. Like I don't understand it. And it never hit him. Like he never was able to process those feelings. And even now, like we went to St. George this last weekend, me and my two younger kids, and left Brock and Caden home alone. And I called Brock. He didn't answer. I called him like 6 times. And when that happens, I panic. And so I FaceTimed him and he answered. And I saw him and I went, "Oh, you've had a really bad night." And he's like, "Yeah, it's been bad." We jumped right in the car and came right home. And when I got home, he was laying on the couch. And I said, "What do you need? What can I do?" And he's like, "Just you sitting by me makes me feel better." And he laid there the rest of the night. No words were said, nothing was done. He just laid there all night long. And then the following morning, he got up and went to Bishoprick like no big deal. And I'm like, what is going on? What is happening? And this was just this weekend. And so yesterday he said to me, "What is wrong with me? Like, why am I the way I am? Why can't I get help? Why can't I fix this?" And I'm just like, I wish I had the answers. Anxiety, depression, self-manipulation, self-doubt is something that he battles every single day. And I never understood anxiety. If you would have asked me 21 years ago or even 22 years ago about anxiety, I would have laughed and been like, "Give me a break. That's such a cop out. It's not real." And this is my everyday life. And I never truly talk about how it makes me feel. So I was Relief Society president, gosh, I think it was like 5, 6 years ago. And I would listen to these women talk about relationships and talk about all these things and their anxieties and their depression and their kids and their spouses. And I would just listen because, yes, I had a husband with anxiety and depression, but we had never been through anything like this before. And I couldn't really relate. And they weren't coming to me asking me to fix it. They just needed a sounding board, right? And so I was that sounding board. And then here I am in this situation where we're not even hanging out with our best friends that we see at least once a week, if not more. We're not going over to family dinner at Brock's family's house because he can't handle it. We're going down to my mom's house every once in a while for dinner because it's quieter down there and there's just one or two of my siblings that go. And it's a safe space for Brock, whereas he didn't even feel safe at his own parents' house because he felt like everybody was judging him. But we don't talk about like the internal struggles that we face being a spouse married to somebody with all of these things. And it has been hands down the hardest thing that I've ever been through in my life. And it wasn't until Brock went back to work that I finally was able to just go, "Okay, take a breather. You're okay." And my body literally started shutting down. I had a major surgery 4 weeks ago that has completely changed my life, and not for the better. But it's because my body was just in fight or flight mode. And finally, a little bit of that pressure was relieved, and my body was like, "You're done." And it was awful, and it's been terrible, and the recovery has been insane and nothing that I ever expected. And I feel like, just right when I start coming up for air and I feel like, okay, somebody's thrown me the buoy and I can hang on to the buoy or I can hang on to the life jacket or whatever, somebody else rips it out from under me and here we are again. And I'm terrified to go back through that because of not only what it did to my marriage, to our household, but to our kids. Not even what it did to me personally, but watching my kids go through what they went through was hands down the worst part of all of this. Like we stopped laughing, we stopped smiling, and I'm a happy, bubbly, loud, obnoxious, crazy person. And all of it stopped. And it breaks my heart because my kids, and if you ask them what the last 10 months has been like for them, they will tell you that it has been pure hell. That Caden is like, "Well, this is how it's been since I got home from my mission. I don't know any different. This is just our new normal." And I'm like, "This is not normal. This is not normal." And but it has been so hard. And I've had nobody. I mean, I have my mom, I have my family. Like, Brock's family is really close. They just live behind us. I take care of his grandma on top of all of this 3 days a week. She lives next door. Like, I have people, but like, I felt like as Relief Society president, like, I couldn't relate to them. I couldn't help, so I would just listen. And I'm not the type of person to call up my friend and be like, oh my gosh, this is what, da 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 da, now fix it. And so I internalize all of it and I hold it all in until I just can't handle it anymore. And it's been so hard. I've never felt more alone. I went from having a happy marriage. Garrett would tell us all the time, I want a marriage like you and Dad have. You guys don't fight. Dad helps with everything. Like, you guys really are best friends and partners in everything. I want that with my life and my wife. And all of that changed. And I went from being a mom and a wife to being mom, dad, like I said, everything. And I went from having a husband to having a roommate and feeling like I was his parent, basically having to mother him. Hey, you haven't eaten. Here's your food. Okay, you need to sit up. You got to take a bite. Like, literally having to retrain my toddler how to take care of themselves. And it was so freaking hard. It was so freaking hard.
Well, and you went from one extreme to the other, meaning like your husband was everything to you. He was so helpful. So going from that to not helpful at all would be completely extreme and difficult. I'm so sorry.
It was awful. It was awful. But I kept thinking, like, do you hear what's being said? Like, how does this make you feel? Like, and he's like, I hear it and I know I should be reacting. I literally can't do it. I remember one day I got a phone call from his dad. I had taken him up and dropped him off at the LDS Access Center, and his dad had called me, and he just ripped me apart. And you have to know, my father-in-law is wonderful. I love my father-in-law. He and we are a lot alike. And so I'm the type of person, if there's an issue, let's go. Let's talk it out. Let's hash it out. Let's fight it out and then be done and move along. And he's the same way. And so he called me and he just laid into me one day. And I'm in the car. Brock's next to me because I couldn't leave him alone ever. And I have it on speaker and I just look over at Brock. Like, do you hear? Like, everybody is thinking this is my fault. This is me. I'm putting too much pressure on you. I'm doing this. Like, can you hear this? And it was the first time that he finally was like, Dad, this is not her. And it was because Brock had had a nervous breakdown. He was having a midlife crisis. He was having all these things. And he's like, well, what's the difference? What makes you think that you are qualified to tell me when he's doing? And I'm like, this is my life. This is what I live. And I finally was like, you know what? I can't talk to you right now. And I hung up the phone. And Brock was like, I'm so sorry. And I said, but are you? Like, do you understand what's happening? And he goes, no, but I really want to be sorry. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then the next day, his dad came up to me and apologized and just started crying. And he felt a lot of the guilt. He felt like, I think both of my in-laws felt like anytime I would call him and say, this is what's happening, that I was blaming them. And I never was pushing the blame on them ever. And I kept reiterating that, like, you guys know, this is nobody's fault. Like, I don't know how to fix this, but I need help. Like, I need support. I can't do this. And it was so hard. What hit me the worst is, so I like to do things for other people. And I pride myself in, like, when my dad passed away, I didn't get to be sad. I don't pride myself in that, but I didn't get to be sad. I had worked on a funeral video with my dad before he died. I had helped him plan the funeral. I had made a funeral program with him before he died. Like, I had done all these things. And so when my dad passed away, my brother had called and said, you need to come down. And I said, is he gone? And he said, no, but you need to come. So I went down and he passed away while I was driving down there. And I didn't know. I walked in the door. Nobody said, hey, Dad's gone, like nothing. I walked in and I looked around. I saw all my siblings except two sisters were not there. One lived in California, but my other sister who lives here wasn't there. And I walked in the bedroom and I saw my dad and I went, oh my hell, is he dead? Like, none of you called me. And I got so mad. And I just went over and I collapsed on my dad. And my mom looked at me and she goes, okay, you know what to do. And I got up, I picked myself up, I called my husband first, then I called the mortuary, I called the bishop of the ward. Like, I had promised to do all these things. And so I never got to feel the emotions of losing my dad. And I was a daddy's girl through and through. And I still talk about him and I cry. Like I say, I'm not emotional, but here I am getting emotional. But I didn't get to feel the emotions of losing my dad because I had to do things for everybody else. When I called and told Brock, he lost it. The kids were at my in-laws, and I said, you need to get the kids and come down so they can see him before the mortician picks him up. And he called and told his mom and said, please don't tell the kids, I want to tell them. And so when he got the kids and brought them down, he didn't tell them until right before they got there. And then I came out and talked to them. They were able to go in and, hug my dad, whatever. But I had to carry them. I had to carry Brock. I didn't expect it to be as emotional for him as I thought it would be for me. But he also lost a dad. Like, my dad was his dad for so many years. And I didn't, so I had to carry him and my kids, and I didn't really get to experience that emotion. And so that's when I drowned myself in serving other people. Like, that's when my love for baking really came out, because I could make things and take them to people. I don't like having people do things for me, but I love to do things for other people. So what really hit me was one day I had run to the grocery store and I came back, and some of our friends from a different ward, but a couple streets over, were at my house, and they were on the side of my yard where we have a bunch of gravel, but there were so many weeds, and it's been driving me crazy. And I keep asking Brock, please go pull those. Like, I don't have 2 seconds to go pull these freaking weeds. Can you just go out and pull? I mean, it's stupid weeds, but can you just go pull these? Like, I'd be pissed as a neighbor if they had all these weeds like coming, Anyway, they were on the side of my house pulling all of those weeds. Our 2 friends and two of their sons. And I lost it. And I gained composure, and I got out of the car, pulled in my garage, got out of the car, and I came out and I said, oh my gosh, you guys do not need to do this. And they're like, go back inside. We're not here. Go back inside. She had texted me a couple days before and said, right this second, what do you need? In this moment, what can I do for your family? And I didn't even respond. And I always respond to text. Like, if I don't respond to a text, friends are calling Brock, or they're calling my mom, or what's wrong with Katie? They're calling the kids. And so she drove past and she's like, you know what? I'm going to do this. It was the biggest stress reliever off my shoulders, which sounds so stupid. It took so much off of me, and I lost it. And I was so grateful. And so I pulled her younger son over and I said, I'm going to make you some cookies. What kind of cookies do you want? And his dad goes, absolutely not. This is a service we are doing. You are not rewarding us. And I said, well, this is something that I want to do to say thank you. And I didn't ask you. Ledger, what cookies do you want? And so I did. I made cookies and took them over the next day. And anyway, but it really touched me to see that, oh my gosh, doing something as simple as coming and pulling some weeds took so much pressure. And then the following day, a truck shows up at my house, and they had sprayed so that the weeds couldn't come back. So it was one less thing on my plate. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But through that whole thing, like, people are so good. I would get random cards in the mail with $50 or $100, no return address, just this note expressing their appreciation and gratitude for sharing this, for talking about our story, for being vulnerable and sharing it on social media, and just to help. Or, hey, here is a $10 gift card to Quench It. Here's a $5 gift card to Swig. Like, go get a drink for yourself. I was a big vanilla Coke drinker. Now I can't have it. But like, all these things and all these people that I know them obviously, but I don't even know who they are. So then I'm looking at their card, like trying to figure out who sent it and where's the postmark, like all these things. And it was like, people are so good. And when you feel like you're 100% alone, you're truly not ever alone. And I'd have customers show up to do pickups. And they would say, thank you so much for sharing your story and what you guys are going through. I'm in a similar situation where I'm the one that has the anxiety, the crippling anxiety. And, like, it just started all these conversations with all these people that I never would have known. I never would have even had that conversation. And it's been incredible. And through it all, like, I've made lifelong friends who check in with me, or I check in with them almost daily. Like, it's added so much more to my to-do list, but it's also taken so much off my to-do list as well, if that makes any sense. Um, I I feel like it was an eternity to go through everything that we were going through, and then to have Brock back for just a minute, even though he wasn't Brock. And I kept saying, if this is the new you, if this is how life's going to be, I can accept that because you're still here. It got to the point where I finally said, I'm ready to jump off that cliff, because then I know my kids will be taken care of. I know that my kids will have, money coming in from Social Security. They'll be able to have whatever to be taken care of, and whatever happens with you. I can't do it anymore, but I'm ready to pull that trigger. And when I said that out loud and I listened to it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, Katie, you freaking need help yourself." But it was it was like my kids heard it, and Brock heard it, and Brock just looked at me. And I'm like, literally, that is the only out that I can see. And it was so, so hard to be in that place, because there's only been one other time where I felt that low, and I was 17 years old, and I did attempt to kill myself, and that's a whole nother story. But I'd only been that low one other time, and I didn't know how to climb out of it. I didn't know how to get through it, but somehow I did, because of the people who surrounded me.
Katie, thank you so much for being brave and sharing everything that you have with us, because you kind of said it in some other ways. Like, a lot of us, or a lot of people, they're scared to say how they feel or what they think, right? And hold it all in. And then all these problems come about. But you shared a lot of reminders of um, people want to help us, right? We just have to be brave enough to ask for it. And I'm like you, nope, I don't need anyone. I can take care of it. I can keep doing it. And then yes, we kill ourselves. So another good reminder is we put everyone else first. We have to do a little bit of self-care. So I hope now that he's back to work, you'll take a little bit of time for self-care. But yeah, I can't imagine everything you've been through, and you're still going through. You're not completely out of it, and you're just still being positive through all of it. So you're amazing. What is something that you would leave our listeners with someone who may be going through something similar? What's something that you would share with them?
So it's almost like when we're on an airplane and they talk to us, and this sounds so stupid. Like when people used to say this, I used to be like, oh my gosh, this is so dumb. I'm not going to put an oxygen mask on myself before I put it on my kids. But in all reality, we have to. We have to take care of ourselves, because if we don't, we can't take care of our kids, our family. The exhaustion, the killing myself at work, the taking on every order, every event, no matter what, the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to provide for my family, it doesn't make sense. If we are killing ourselves and we're taking it all in ourselves, we're just doing more harm than good. And so if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, which I hope you don't, I am here seriously for any of the listeners. They can find me anywhere. I would love to listen and to be a sounding board and to help them, but seek out people. Do something for yourself. I had a friend send me $50 through Apple Pay and said, go get a pedicure. And it was the best thing, because for a minute I took care of me. I took care of myself. I have a life motto that I've lived by since I was 16 years old or 15 years old, and it's, you gotta love it. And that doesn't mean that, oh, just suck it up and fake it till you make it. You just gotta love it and push through. It means find the good in every situation. Find something to love. Find something to be able to push you to be better, to help you to make it through that moment. Find something out. Don't hold on to the negative. As women, we're so good at holding on to the negative and finding the negative in every situation. So find something good, hold on to it, and learn to love it. I don't love my new life. I don't love what it looks like every day of having to talk Brock into getting up the next day, and night before he gets up for work. I don't love it, but I'm finding a love for it, because in that, Brock's learning to again be self-sufficient, to get up and do something for himself. And so it's hard and it sucks, and I know there's hundreds of thousands of people going through similar situations, talk about it. Stop being so taboo and holding it all in and thinking that you can't talk about it. I always have kept it in. My family had no idea how bad it was until it got bad. And so talk about it, look for people to help, allow people to help you, and be willing to accept that service, no strings attached. When somebody pops into your head, reach out to them. Like it was as simple as receiving a text of, "Hey, I'm thinking about you today," or, whatever. Like, stop thinking about yourself, start thinking about others. But take care of yourself as well. I know, oxymoron, but
Katie, that's
anyway.
awesome. We love you so much, and we are just so grateful that you are willing to share. A couple things that you said. One is, it's interesting how we are, when we're deep in things and really on the go and driven and focused, our body just has to keep up. And as soon as we slow down, that's when we get the flu. That's when we get sick. That's when everything weakens. And so it just tells me, don't ever slow down. Just keep going full speed. But also, this life is meant for challenges. This life is meant for growth. And the only way we can grow is challenges. And who knows all the things that you are supposed to learn in this, but everyone around you as well, everyone around Brock, is learning things on a daily basis. And I love the connections. Connection is so important to me. It's why Marcy and I do this. And if it's just that alone, that's worth it. It sounds like you've had a lot of opportunity and experiences with connection. And so we pray for you, and grateful that you have a relationship with God, and to know that it really is going to be okay. It really is. And sometimes there's a new normal involved, and that sucks, but that is this life. And so thank you, Katie, so much for joining us. We look forward to our future guest. And one thing I did want to say, actually, a friend of ours, Jessica Endicott, and I've told you, Katie, this, I'm going to connect you guys. Jessica Endicott is amazing. She deals with addiction recovery. She deals with depression, anxiety, and how to, find natural solutions for those. And Jessica Endicott, her Instagram is Collective Healing Arts, and she is phenomenal. We're going to get you guys in touch and see if there's anything she can do for you guys. She is, her life's mission now is all about helping others in your situation, and not just the ones suffering from, the illness, but those who are supporting them just like you. So we'll connect you guys, and love our group, our tribe that's here listening every week. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. If you feel in your heart to be a part of our community for women, check us out at thebreakthroughtribe.com.